I'm back to talk about more unhelpful thought patterns, and today we're talking about catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is when we make things out to be way worse than they are. It's our tendency to consider what is the worst possible case scenario here and then focus in on that as if that is definitely going to happen. Regardless of if we have evidence that it might not hit the worst case scenario, once again, the worst case scenario is what we're focused on. Catastrophizing also comes in the form of failing to even consider the positive outcomes of a certain situation. People who like to feel in control of situations or really have a low tolerance for not knowing what's going to happen are a lot more likely to catastrophize than somebody who is okay with just going with the flow. Often because there's a belief here underlying that says if I plan out all of the possible scenarios, then I will be better prepared for if X, Y, and Z goes wrong. The problem is you're really honing in and focusing on things going wrong in the worst possible way that you could, or the worst possible way that things could go. And predicting all the things that can go wrong kind of plays into the cognitive distortion or the unhealthy thought pattern of mind reading too, because you really don't know. So unless you predict correctly, then you're just coming up with possible scenarios that might not ever happen or that you actually never had to plan for. In fact, you might just be negating the thing that you could plan for to make the situation go smoothly in the first place. So let me give you examples of this. Catastrophizing could be like, I have a test tomorrow and I start thinking, if I fail this test, I'm going to flunk out of school. Like it's going to bring my whole grade average down and I'm just going to fail the whole course. When in reality, it might bring your grade down a couple notches. You probably won't be failing the test and you could have actually put your time thinking about you failing the test into studying instead of worrying and freaking out. It's really key to look at what story are you creating for yourself around the scenario we're talking about. Our beliefs just impact so much more than one would care to believe or trust. So your belief that everything is going to go terribly is seriously going to impact how you actually show up in the scenario. Anyways, we'll talk about more of that when I get into like CBT and what CBT is. Catastrophizing could also be like your check engine light comes on and you just assume, oh my goodness, I need to get a whole new engine. And you focus in on that thought when reality, you might just need, I don't know about cars. Maybe you just need an oil change. Another example is you have a pain in your stomach and you automatically go to, oh my gosh, I must have the big C. My last example will be like if you made a mistake at work and you catastrophize to, oh my gosh, my boss is going to kill me. They're going to fire me on the spot. I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to be able to pay rent. And what is going to happen? I'm going to lose my whole house. In reality, you could probably just talk to your boss about the issue that you had and they probably will forgive you if you're generally a good worker and don't make mistakes like this. The problem with catastrophizing is that it kind of unnecessarily stresses us out before we have all the information. We don't know how the job interview is going to go. We don't know how our boss is going to react. We don't know if we'll actually fail the test. And yet now we're in this scenario of the worst has happened and I am helpless. Catastrophizing can have a big impact on our behavior, including maybe we don't try out for something, a team or a sport, or we hold ourselves back from new experiences just because we worry that the worst case scenario will happen. We'll embarrass ourselves, we'll fail, or we'll lose money or something like that. I wouldn't say that catastrophizing and anxiety are the same thing, but I will say that catastrophizing is definitely going to ramp up your anxiety because once again, you're thinking of the worst case scenario, how everything can go wrong, and you're starting to create this fight or flight in your body because you're worried, you're fearful, right? It's something that's going to attack you, not in a saber-toothed tiger kind of way, but in a mental or physical safety or livelihood type of way, right? Because if you're worried about, for example, losing your house because you did something wrong at work, then you are now scared for your shelter, for your home, for your survival. Okay, how do we address catastrophizing? How do we lessen catastrophizing? One way is going to tell yourself a different story. Sorry, I'm sick. Tell yourself a different story about the situation. Just like I think it was with like mind reading, come up with a different outcome or scenario and just choose to believe that. Be Delulu. When we choose to focus on different outcomes, or when we choose even to focus on what it is we can do to improve the potential outcome of a situation, then we'll be in a lot better spot. If it's something you can do, like prepare more for your test, do that. But if it's something you can't necessarily do, like your check engine light comes on, just stop the thoughts and choose to focus on something else and go to the mechanic. And then wait until you get that information before you start spiraling. At that point, you don't even have to spiral, because then you know the exact situation, you know what you need to do to handle it, and then you have maybe a dollar amount in order to how to handle it. Yes, if it's the transmission or, the engine, something super expensive, then you can start figuring out how to solve that problem. But prior to knowing that it's something huge that's maybe going to cost thousands of dollars, just breathe and focus on another possible outcome. Another way to combat this is to just be kinder to yourself, practice self-compassion. A lot of times we are so critical of ourselves and we think the worst case scenario about how others might perceive us in a public event, and oh, they must have hated me, right? Once again, mind reading kind of collides with this unhelpful thought pattern of catastrophizing. Practice empathy and understanding with yourself, because, for example, the boss situation, how would you treat an employee if they made a small error that could be fixed and corrected? If they were a great employee, would you decide to fire them? Would you maybe decide, okay, they deserve another chance? We can step outside of our own experience and see how others might perceive it, or how we might perceive it if it was somebody else. Then we're often more compassionate than if we're just looking at how others might treat us or how we treat ourselves. Another way to combat this is to look at past experiences. Like I said before, we often can negate the information that goes into proving ourselves wrong, which cognitive dissonance, but we can negate the information that tells us otherwise, that, hey, this situation is going to go horribly off the rails. So let's come up with other situations and other times when maybe we thought the worst would happen and actually the best scenario happened, the best possible outcome happened for us. What we're really trying to do here is train our minds to see other possible scenarios outside of the worst one. We're really trying to retrain that negativity bias that, to be fair, is inherent in all of us. Traditionally, the negativity bias protected us and made sure that we basically made the safest choices. Now what it does is really ramp up our anxiety and make us worry about the choices we've made or have yet to make. Ultimately, catastrophizing is only working off of a possibility, not fact. And so that's what we have to remember. This is an irrational belief or thought that we're having, and we don't have to play into it. Also notice the correlation between catastrophizing and complaining, because a lot of times we might notice that we're complaining about a lot of little things, or maybe we don't notice, maybe somebody might have to point it out, or maybe we can start noticing how we're complaining about little things all the time. And the thing about little things going wrong, if it doesn't negatively affect us, how can we just switch to a different viewpoint on it? If we sit on the remote and it turns off the TV, okay, just turn it back on. We don't have to spend some time complaining about, oh, and the TV turned off and now I gotta navigate back to my show. Is it that big of a deal? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much time does it take to fix the scenario, right? So start noticing the little ways that you catastrophize and make things into big problems, and that'll help you notice when you're just doing this thing that can easily ramp up your anxiety. Catastrophizing is something I've done heavily in the past, and I still work on it from time to time. So, we all do it. It's just to what degree we do it, how much we do it, and how bad of an impact does it have on our lives. Make sure to follow me for more unhelpful thought patterns, how to combat them, and for more spiritual wellness and spiritual education. Bye.